and worldwide, whose critical provocation aim to forge reality free from ideology.
Speak.
Characterized by the onset of globalization and the rise of it with invented Chinese character, the artist started with invented English word cutting.
就是那种直接 Q， 然后你放地上它就弹起来。
要还我昨天还没来。
就是它会让你多一个这种了解别人的一个契机。
Maybe. We can share it.
But essentially, you'll give a 15-minute presentation at the end, and then we'll go straight into questions.
All right.
Lovely, yeah. Start whenever you're ready, and I'll click start on the timer.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jessie. Today I'll be presenting the Ethics Group Conference, an ethical workshop. Shots from Both Sides, Productive Conflict and Critical Return in Curating is a conference centering the self-examination of curatorial practices through the 4 sub-themes. The title is inspired by the interdependency nature of our profession. We're constantly judging and assessing today's society and politics, carefully selecting our words to construct a meaningful exhibition for the public while contributing to certain discourses. This conference presents existing discussions in the curatorial field and aims to inspire curators to take critical turns and embrace conflict for the greater good of society. Our conference title, An Ethical Workshop, was inspired by the constant debate of ethics in the art world. The workshop activity intends to expose the conflicting curatorial ethics of the audience. The goal of this conference was to encourage curators to practice self-reflecting curating. We define this term as assessing the ethical implications of when and how to resist and accept self-censorship in curatorial practices. Self-censorship has not been a term widely acknowledged or discussed in our course. This conference was therefore necessary to open a discussion surrounding this topic. As a representation of the institution, institutional curators are responsible for its speaking and speech. The curator's work is a commitment to the triple ethical demand of the institution, the public, and the artist. Curatorial ethics is formed from a delicate dance among these ethical demands. We settled on a workshop format as a post-pandemic response. Incorporating audience engagement in our conference, we wanted to create a space for students to share and discuss ideas. We wanted to draw attention to the urgent and relevant issues not only in the art world, but also global and social political climate. We wanted to use a specific study in an institutional setting that was controversial and involved a complex social and political context. After several group discussions, Guggenheim's exhibition, Art in China After 1989, Theatre of the World fitted our selection criteria the most. The curatorial concept of the exhibition was heavily related to the social and political issues in the context of China. The year 1989 marked a historical moment in China. Artists have used art as a medium to express their experience under authoritarian conditions since 1989. Animal rights barely existed in the 90s in China, and Chinese people do not hold the same human rights compared to other democratic or liberal countries. Did the Guggenheim explain the consequence of creating art that spoke against the Chinese government? Or was there enough free and accessible material released by Guggenheim to help the audience understand the context? These all contributed to how some visitors may not be able to understand the works. Withdrawals and cancellations are not the only decisions curators and institutions can make when faced with controversy. There is no perfect balance between a curator and the ethical demand. In the previous section, I identified one potential cause of the controversy and another main cause. The Guggenheim could have held a panel discussion, pre-podcast curators tours, or re-edited the exhibition statement, art, or captions to provide more accessible context to the audience about China's social context. The Guggenheim could have added warning signs in the gallery, reception, or online, consulted with related bodies in the planning stage, or replaced the works with another work that responded to the animal protesters. As curators, we should curate proactively and contribute to the development of new ideas by negotiating through conflict, balancing ethical demands, and curating productive dialogues among the artist, the institution, and the public. The outcome of this conference, or any conference, is arguably unpredictable and cannot be quantitated. Censorship and self-censorship are epidemic in the practice, but rarely discussed in our higher education and curatorial studies. At the end of the conference, we have concluded that it is impossible to entirely avoid controversy, as no one can predict what can spark opposition. A curator may need to compromise their curatorial vision to an extent in some situations. One's curatorial ethics, or the balance between ethical demands, is personal, situational, and fluid. The definition of curatorial ethics is thus one's balance between their curatorial vision and the other's ethical demands. This balance is subject to change with the social and political climate at the time, the curator's willingness to compromise their curatorial vision, and many other variables such as the pressure from the institution or public that may lead to one's resignation. Therefore, there is no unitary code of ethics to follow for curators. And that's all, and I have my bibliography at the back. The animal protesters' ethics was animal right is more important than another culture's protest. So even if Guggenheim provided more context of how this exhibition was important for artistic freedom, I wouldn't think that it would have changed much. However, there are some strategies, like I mentioned, like panel discussions or other strategies that could have helped a portion of the audience, especially to understand, oh, there's actually more to these artworks. I would say it really depends on the institution and the artist and the curator whether or not they want to take this risk and the potential backlash, because I don't think controversy can be entirely avoided. Whatever you say might trigger some sort of response.
I think it's really kind of in a very interesting way gets to the heart of the problem, what's at stake. Institutions are confronted with controversial things that are nonetheless important culturally and historically to reveal and show and talk about. If they decide that there's too much at stake and the risk is too high, then the world is denied important cultural artifacts. And so what role would like a changing ethical principle, what would it have to accommodate in order to sort of mitigate that thing? Because then suddenly culture is being driven by risk assessment, by risk management, by reputational management and preservation, rather than what's important culturally, despite the odds, despite the... Just to finish, I personally think that culture should be given the space to be presented despite those things, or in spite of those things.
I think I was a bit inspired on how activism has addressed this issue, and how a lot of times in the higher ranking of institutions, they've stayed there for so long that they've forgotten to connect with the community, and the controversy comes from the public. So in some way, maybe institutions should reconsider communicating with these communities or the public or consulting parties to actually see, as an outsider, as in the audience, how would you react in this situation? And I think institutions have to be less one-directional in terms of they've researched this thing, they think it's important, therefore I want to show this to the public. However, in order for us to mitigate this controversy, it needs to be a two-way direction, as in the institution needs to listen what has caused this controversy and how can they improve. One of the things I did not agree with Guggenheim was that they only released a statement and they did not try to receive the feedback and then reflect on their practice. How can they do another exhibition to kind of respond?
So what can we learn from your workshop? What does it suggest? Can we say there's some kind of relationship between a personal moral compass or personal ethics and how that might shape an institutional ethics, or are they separate, as they are in many other fields like the medical profession or legal profession, where doctors or lawyers may work against their own personal morals or personal ethics in order to uphold the moral principles or ethical principles of the institutions they're working for? You know, how was that workshop productive, maybe shaping the future that you're hoping for?
Can I comment on how the workshop did not go as expected from my side?
Yeah, please.
I think we should have, instead of asking binary questions of should you do this or this, we should have, if the conference was longer, it should have been a 2-hour workshop that had more information for the audience to actually understand. If we had a longer duration, we should have asked the audience to, in groups, discuss potential strategies from scratch instead of asking them, should you do this or that? And to actually maybe rewrite the exhibition statement. If it was rewritten, do you think the audience would understand the exhibition more? So I think there was a lack of direction in the workshop. When we tried to form our conference at the start of the year, I found that a lot of students had a lack of understanding of what forms our decisions in exhibition making. Our ethics forms our decisions. I think this workshop was more intended for these students who weren't very sure of how did they come to the decision. We wanted to basically ask them rather simple questions under a very limited time constraint to kind of discuss, would you do something different than Guggenheim?
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I think you've answered that really well because it gives insight into what your reflections on the workshop. And I agree with you. And I think actually, those binary questions, they close down something and they offer a binary response, yes or no. It doesn't really promote any further discussion. Although they seem simple, they're actually very complex. Yeah, I think that way you're talking about the workshop could have been very productive.
And I also add something that I've just thought about. If this exhibition was put in now instead of in 2017, it might be different, because I personally feel like after the BLM movement, many people have started to think about how a lot of things are based on a certain political or social context. And especially with what's going on in China with the zero COVID policy. And I don't know if you've heard of the A4 revolution. If this exhibition was put in now, I think had less chance of creating a controversy.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah, the political sort of awareness has really sort of changed since BLM. The current World Cup is being framed politically. It's very interesting. You sort of see kind of these really, really mainstream and enormous platforms being used to sort of present alternative views that sort of leverage a position against the dominant ones of like government, for example. Every time someone scores a goal now, they sort of say Free Palestine. It absolutely shifts the narrative. You've got this enormous platform which is giving voice to a position that is, actually I think you're right. I think that the political climate right now is much more adept at dealing with, or has the language and the lexicon to understand how to frame things politically without that being a problem for people. And I think that's quite an interesting observation, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that does take us to time.
Great. Good presentation. Cool, all right, well done.
Thank you.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Yes. Bye-bye.
Yes, I'm finished. Finally finished.